Hi, and welcome back to another episode of ManaTutor MTG Draft. Today, we are going over kind of the bombs of the format. We're going to be going over the cards that we considered, both of us consider either a B plus or better among the rares and the mythics. Then we'll go over the uncommons that at least one of us considered a B plus or above. That will kind of be the bomb section, those two combined. And then after that, we're going to cover the grading differences we had the most. We already did that for the commons that we went on over, and we went over the archetype signposts already. So if you haven't seen that, check out the link that should be right above us here. That will take you over to the other episode to review that. But we have all the other cards, our differences of, again, rares, mythics, and uncommons. So with that, we are going to dive into the first big bomb that we both agreed on. Matt, do you want to give it a read?
These are not in any. These are just in alphabetical order. These are not in any we're not. It's not fast to worst. Although alphabetically there were a lot of A's and B's that we both were like, wow, this is kind of crazy. So anyways, but yeah, go ahead, take it away.
Okay. It's Aqua. I gotta butcher this. Aquazot's Deepest Betrayal. For 3 black, you get a 4/4 Bat God. That's interesting. It has flying and lifelink, and whenever it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. When it dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. And the transform is you get Temple of the Dead. You can tap it to add a black mana, or you can pay 2 to black to tap, transform it, activate only if the player has 1 or fewer cards in hand and only as a sorcery. So this is kind of the pattern of all the different gods of the set. Gods in Magic.
One of every color.
Yeah, there's one of every color. They are essentially creatures that can't die, right? It's kind of the theme of gods. And this one's a really good one.
Yes.
Yeah. Base rate.
I mean,
base rate 4/4 flying lifelink for 5. Love that as is. It has just upside. The making your opponent discard when attacks is great, but that's kind of a bad ability in the late game when your opponent won't have any cards, but it makes up for it for you getting a draw card. Everything on this is upside. Get the 1/1 flyer, and it won't be that hard to transform this late in the game either. If you're not able to, that means your opponent's holding up cards in their hand. So,
well, no. So it's as if a player has 1 or fewer cards.
Oh yeah, it's not even the opponent in this case.
If you empty your hand, then you can do it again. So, they can't even prevent you from bringing it back, right? So, anyways, yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's probably one of the best cards in the set, guaranteed. It's there's very little there's actually very little removal that'll hit it as well, right? I think there's a white one that does 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, as is normally white, plus 1 a colorless and a white. That'll get it. There's a couple of things that do a little bit more, like there's the boulders that cost 6 to do 6 damage to target creature. It's an artifact. But there's actually very little that will actually hurt this. And even if it does, unless they have an exile, it comes back, right? It comes back later on. So, and it's even cheaper to cast the second time. So, I mean, this is going to straight up win a lot of games when it hits the board. And then if it doesn't immediately win, it's going to bring it. It's good at all times, right? It's good when you're behind. It's excellent when you're ahead. So this is draft this card.
So a little bit about grading scales. My personal take is I don't give something A pluses unless it basically wins you the game on the spot, regardless. This does not get there, but it's as close as you can get to there. And so we both had this as an A.
Yeah. That's the same way I was thinking, right? It's not going to immediately win you the game.
All right. Moving on to the next one.
All right. Yep. So next up, we have Anim Pikal, 1000th Moon. For one, a red and a white, you get a legendary creature, human soldier. That's a 1/2. And whenever you attack with one or more non-known creatures, you put a +1/+1 counter on a name call, and then create X/1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on a name call. So this is another just straight up excellent card. I mean, it's obviously below rate when you cast it, but if you've already got a creature out, like even though it has summoning sickness, it's whenever you attack, so you can attack and immediately put a counter on him and get a gnome. So like turn 3, you're getting an extra creature. You're getting the 2/3 for 3. Next turn, he's with a 3/4. This is the kind of thing. If you play it on turn 3, it's not going to win you the game outright, but it's going to be a major threat that your opponent has to deal with. And they're going to have to use removal on it, because odds are, until it gets a little bit bigger, you're probably not going to be attacking with it. But you can attack with the gnomes, or you can attack with other things that you're drawing. So this just gets you a ton of rectangles out on the board. And yeah, I mean, it's just another excellent card. What do you think there?
Not much to add. I mean, I have a set of B+, you have an A-. I think we're spot on right there. I took the lower side of it, but I could easily see this being A- range. There are ways to deal with it on board, right?
Sure.
So
it's vulnerable early, right? Like a braid kills it, early on until it gets a little bit bigger. So there's certainly ways to deal with it, but it forces your opponent to deal with it. It puts them on a timer where if they don't deal with it, you're just going to overwhelm them, because you're going to be getting 5, 6 extra gnomes every time, and there's nothing they're going to be able to do with that.
And a lot of the judging the grades on these really good cards and getting the differences is about, does it give you something good up front, or do you have to wait a bit for it? And your point that this can activate right away with put it on the board, attack with something, that gives us a lot of upside. So it makes it a very good card. All right. Third on our list of bombs, we have Bedrock Tortoise. For it looks not so great up front. For 3 and a green, you get an 0/6 turtle. But they're making turtles good. So as long as it's your turn, creatures you control have hexproof. That's a nice add-on. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. We've seen cards like this in the past that often say creatures with assign combat damage based upon their toughness. But this is the best of both worlds, because that can hurt a creature that is higher power than toughness. So you happen in limited, you're limited to what kind of creatures you can get. You take the good cards, even regardless of if they have high power or toughness a lot of times. This one only gives you the benefit if you want it, sort of a thing. It deals damage according to its toughness when you want it to do so, and when its power's higher, you can deal with that. Deals damage based upon that. So this essentially reads as a 4-mana 6/6 that makes all your other creatures more powerful. Quite a good card. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, I agree with. I think it's particularly good for some. I mean, it's a 4-mana 6/6, right? Obviously, that is going to be a major thing, but it's particularly good for there's a lot of blue creatures that are like 1/3, right? For like a 1/3 for 2, right? That effectively makes that a 3/3 creature, right? And so I honestly think that's going to be the niche for this card. I mean, it's amazing on its own, right? So all by itself, but in deck in terms of like a build around strategy, getting this, then I would probably want to try and put some of those in there, and that immediately my mind goes to blue for that. So I think this will be very, very prominent, or people who get this will tend to gravitate towards green blue, like a green blue map strategy, which is fantastic, right? Because you can put counters on this guy, and then he's assigned 7 damage, 8 damage, right? So and yeah, the hexproof is just great, right? Like it basically prevents all instant speed removal, forces your opponent to cast things on their turn instead, which gives you more knowledge and an advantage in combat. And so yeah, I mean it's excellent.
And there's not much that can deal with 6 toughness to get rid of this. So this is sticking around. Even if you say pacify this, it still has its effect going on for all your other creatures. So with all that, even though I'm not a huge fan in general of just big creatures that do nothing else, like if it adds trample on, it gets significantly more powerful. But this does enough and is so efficient that I have it at A minus, and it looks like you agree.
Yeah. I think we both came in at the same spot. It is a bomb, and I would immediately be looking at it. And the best part is, it's like unlike a lot of the creatures we've seen, like the first two we talked about, right? This only has 1 green hit. So this guy, you don't have to be heavy green to still take advantage of it the same way that you may have to be in some of the other sets. So that's also another reason that I would.
Especially in this set, which is unlike the last set. Logical Drain was a multicolored set. This is not. I'm not saying you can still splash on occasion, but they have not really added a whole lot of fixing to the set, and you are encouraged to draft 2-color deck. And if you have never dipped your toe on the opposite side of the spectrum and drafted a monocolor deck, you should. Now, when I say monocolored, I don't. There can literally be some monocolored, but usually it's more like you have a 11-6 split of land. So you're just extremely heavily towards one color, and then you have a support color that's extremely low compared. So, but you should. I'm guessing this set you'll draft some of that, and this could be, to your point, in like a base blue
in the 6,
in the 6 exactly.
Segueing a bit into things you absolutely cannot splash. The next card is Bloodletter of Akhlazat for 1 and 3 black. You get a 2/4 vampire demon with flying, and if an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. And then the helpful, subtext there is damage count causes loss of life, right? So it's basically a 4/4 flyer for 4, based on that, and it makes it effectively doubles the power of all of your creatures, at least when they're hitting the opponent. And so this is another one of those ones that will very quickly end the game, because unless your opponent has enough blockers to continually block everything that you're bringing in. But again, in and of itself, it's got flying, it's got that little bit of evasion on it, and so it'll hit pretty often, and then your opponent's going to be taking 4 every time. So they can only do that for so long. So yeah, it's excellent. It's 4/4 flyer for 4 on its own is amazing. And then you add the double damage to head, and it just I think I put this as an A minus. I can't remember.
Yeah, you did. You put it as an A minus. I put it as a B plus because I couldn't quite get myself to go into bomb range for something that does cost 3 pips. And it is just ultimately a 2/4 flyer until you can make it not be, right? Like it will deal the 4 when you hit the opponent. But what if they have a 1/3 flyer and that can just block it? And you're not in a position to go wide, let's say. With all that combined, it was enough to keep me in the B range, but it's high up there. It's still it's a good card.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. A minus might be a little too high, but I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is going to win a game.
To some degree.
Not immediately, but this is going to win it.
Yeah, this episode is good so that when you see these cards, a lot of times Wizards is tricky with what kind of rares they print. There's a lot of F rares that exist in limited. There's a lot of A rares, and sometimes they have a lot of text, and you have to decipher between them. And this lets you know, like, if you see this card, you're taking it. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a B plus or if it's an A or what A minus or whatever. Like, this is the card you want out of the pack when this shows up in the pack.
Yes.
Assuming you're still open to black, let's put it that way. You should not abandon your colors to take this to try to make it happen. But up next, we have Bonehorde Dracosaur. For 3 red, you get a 5/5 flying first strike. What's not to like about that? At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 2 cards in the library. You may play them this turn. If you exile the land card this way, create a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exile the non-land card this way, create a treasure token. After reading 5/5 flying first strike for 5, I was waiting to find what's the text and I just got to give this a downside. And I kept on reading, like, everything is upside. Literally, it's just good all the way through.
Yes, it's amazing. I mean, I guess if there is a downside, right, this probably doesn't play particularly well in descend decks, right, because you're going to be exiling things. Now you can play them, and then if it would go to graveyard after that if it was a an instant or sorcery, but even then, like, that doesn't count for descend. So yeah, I mean but. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I guess the only situation where this isn't good, right, is if you're low on cards. If your games run a little long and you've only got like 10 cards left, and but it still gives you a few turns where this guy is going to probably win you the game with a 5/5 flying first strike. So, yeah, I mean, the extra treasure tokens, the extra creatures that he's going to generate are just going to be amazing. Yeah, it's
just a good card. We both have this as a solid A.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't win you the game immediately, but it will very shortly thereafter. All right, so next up we have Reaches, Eager Pillager. For 2 colorless and 1 red, you get a 3/3 Goblin Pirate with first strike. And when a pirate you control attacks, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Create a treasure token. Target creature can't block this turn. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. And so, I mean, 3/3 first strike for 3. Amazing as it is there. The fact that he is a pirate, so he triggers his own ability, is what, for me, really does it and kind of pushes it up. You don't necessarily have to build a pirate deck with this guy because he comes on his own with his ability. Now, the one I think that's probably going to get used most often is target creature can't block this turn. You basically prevent your opponent from using their strongest creature to block. Lets you get in more attacks, lets you do more damage without having to sacrifice a creature. And so that to me is like the strongest ability on him. But create a treasure token. If you've got a second pirate and you're getting a treasure token every turn, that's amazing. The exiling the top card of your library can also be really good in like later game stages, right, where you're where it effectively could be just draw a second card every turn. And so, yeah, he's got he's good in all stages of the game, and that's I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And yeah, excellent card. What do you think?
Yeah, very versatile. Gives you an option for something you're going to want at all stages of the game. To your point, and besides that, it's just a 3/3 first strike to begin with, which is way above rate. And if we both did not put synergy on this grade for a reason, because it's just good as is. But if you do happen to be in a Pirates deck, I mean,
yeah.
So, and also note that this can trigger multiple times. It's whenever a pirate you control. It does not say whenever 1 or more pirates you control.
Yes. But you can only choose each one once.
Yes.
You have to choose one that hasn't been chosen. So you max 3 pirates, and then you can do all 3, right?
I have this as A-. You have this B+. I mean, it's right in that range. Like, I would not go higher than A- for this. I would not go lower than B+, and I could see either one being accurate.
Yeah. I think it's the A- if you have the pirate deck, and then it's like the B+ if you're just playing red and happen to see this guy. It's like, well, yeah, of course I'm gonna take that.
Right. Up next, we have Osier Chasm, Deepest Growth. For 3 green, you get a 6/5 God legendary creature. It has trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. When it dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. So I'll transform it. It transforms into Temple of Cultivation. Tap to add a green, or 2 and a green and tap to transform it. Activate only if you control 10 or more permanents and only as a sorcery. So again, I always start off with the base rate consideration. 5 mana for a 6/5 trample, already above rate. Again, I love trample on my big beefy creatures. I especially love it when it tacks on the ability of when you deal damage to a player, which helps with trample, getting multiple cards depending on the damage, getting those, be able to play those. Um, and it doesn't die because as long as you have 10 or more permanents, you can, you know, do the 2 and a green. I mean, 10 permanents, um, some sets that's a lot, but this set is a rectangle set. There's going to be a lot of permanents in play.
Yeah, yeah. You're gonna have 5 when you cast him minimum. He counts as 1, so that's 6. And then if you attack with him once, even if they double block or whatever, as long as you get 1 damage through, you probably get 2 more. And so that already brings you up to 8 just based on that. And that's assuming you haven't played any creatures or anything else for turns 1 through 4. And so yeah, I mean, it's going to be really hard to find a situation, I think, where you're not going to be able to transform him back almost immediately. Maybe you have to wait a turn or something like that. But he's gonna come out and he's gonna keep hitting the board.
Yeah, it's a great card. We both have him as A minus. So
yeah,
good one.
Next up, we have Kalani's Catcher. For 3 colorless, a green and a red, you get a 5/3 dinosaur. Other dinosaurs you control have haste. When Kalani's Catcher enters the battlefield, create 2/0/1 green dinosaur egg creature tokens. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 1 or more eggs, sacrifice an egg, then create a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token. So basically, this guy is a 3-for-1. So you pay 5 mana. You get a 5/3, and then immediately, as long as you play him in your first main phase, you'll immediately get another 3/3, and then your next turn you'll get another 3/3, and those 3/3s will have haste. So, what is not to like about this? I mean, the only thing that I think I don't like about him is his 3 toughness. He dies to a lot of removal. He'll die to Afraid. He'll die to, some of the other removal that's 3 or higher. But that's a small price to pay because your opponent's going to be dealing with 3 creatures. So, that to me is the other thing that makes it that just puts it way above rate. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I like, especially that you get the 3/3 on the very first turn. That's a big deal because the 5 mana for a 5/3 first turn is, it's fine, I guess. But when you judge these, you typically want, when you add up power and toughness, for it to be double the mana cost. So in a way, this is 8 there plus another 6. So you get 14 power and toughness total out of your 5 mana to start with, and then you'll get 3 more on top of that. Yeah,
6 more.
Or sorry, 6 more. Yeah. So
you get 21 for 5 mana.
Yeah,
right.
It's such a good deal. You're right. There is vulnerability there. That might be enough to take me down to A minus, but the upside is just so good. It's so quick with it that I have an A. You have a B plus. I could see anywhere in there being right.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the reason I take him down to a B plus is only because if your opponent has an Afraid, like you get nothing, right? Because if they do it at the end of your main phase, those eggs don't.
Right. You do get the eggs still have value. Like,
sure, yeah, you get a 0/1 if you get a chump blocker, or I guess if you have the one that does toughness, it's technically that does damage as toughness, right? It's a 1/1. Anyways, yeah, I mean that's the reason for me it's a B plus. It's just like if your opponent happens to have removal handy as you play this, then you're probably getting absolutely nothing out of it. You just kind of shot 5 mana for 2/0/1. But anyways, it's still great. It's still excellent. Definitely take it. But that's the one thing where I could see it not working out quite as well.
Makes sense. Up next, we have Pugnacious Hammerskull. For 2 and a green, you get a 6/6 dinosaur creature. When it attacks while you don't control another dinosaur, put a stun counter on it. So if we talked about a 4 mana 6/6. you might like a 3-mana 6/6 as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
Now that is a downside there for sure. Like if you don't control their dinosaur, they put a stun counter on it. I guess the counter argument I have to that is this is a good card even if you don't attack. Right?
Yes.
Like,
He's a great blocker,
yeah.
right? Like a 6/6 blocker that is going to take out most of anything your opponent's going to hit you with. Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is better in a dinos deck, but you can play this without dinos.
Yeah. There are enough dinos at common and uncommon in the set that you should not have trouble getting, a fairly critical mass. Like I'm thinking 5, 6 dinos, like maybe plus this guy. You're almost always going to have a dino out when you play him, and at that point he's just a 6/6 for free. So there's no downside in that. So yeah, I mean, obviously better in dinos, but like you said, even if not, like he's a great blocker, and then you can choose to swing in with him when it matters, when you need to, because you're going to win the game, and you don't care that he gets stuck.
Yeah, he is significantly better in dinos, and as such, we both did give a synergy grade. I gave a synergy B plus. You gave a synergy A. The only thing keeping me to the B plus is again, this is a just big beefy creature without the trample, but there's plenty of ways to get trample, and it's so efficient that I don't care.
A might be a little high, but I looked at it and I was like, yeah, you put this guy out turn 3, you basically win the game. So that's kind of what I thought. And there's dinos that cost 2, so that's not inconceivable. All right. So next up, we have what I believe is the only planeswalker in this set, and it is Quintorius Hand. For 3 colorless and 1 red and 1 white, you get a legendary planeswalker, Quintorius. He comes in with 4 loyalty counters, and his abilities are +1, create a 3/3 red and white spirit creature token, -3, discover 4, and -6, exile any number of target cards from your graveyard, add 1 red mana for each card exiled this way. You may play those cards this turn. So I honestly don't know how good his ultimate ability is, but his top line one is amazing. Just getting a 3/3, red and white spirit creature every turn is great. And then discovering 4, like, okay, that's, playing anything that you want, or playing anything that comes up that's 4 mana or less, is going to be excellent as well. You can do that every couple of turns. There's not a lot of removal for planeswalkers in the set. I think there might be like 1 card that hits planeswalkers. Directly, at least. I mean, obviously you can always attack him, but the idea is, as long as you're getting that 3/3 red and white spirit every turn, he's going to be hard to attack. You're generally going to have a way to protect him. So I really do always love planeswalkers that generate creatures, because that helps insulate them from attack. So he hits all those marks for me, and I just think it's an excellent card.
Yeah, that's often a key differentiator between like a planeswalker versus a good planeswalker is like, do they put out something the turn you play them really, and can they keep generating blockers for you to keep them alive? And this one does, and that's a pretty good rate for that. The only part I would differ on is I don't really see ever playing the second one, the -3 discover 4, because I'd rather just +1 in order to get a 3/2. But if there was something that you need to hit to win the game, it is nice to roll the die, right? And like if there's something 4 or less that win you the game, go for it. That's the only time I'd use that. So I'm mostly playing this for the +1, but I do think the +6 is a big payoff. Down the line, because
And 6, yeah.
Because you end up being able to play more cards, so it's a form of card draw, and then the static ability takes effect of the dealing 2 to each opponent, and you gain 2 for each one that you play out of that.
So, and I forgot to mention that when I read him, right? So yes, he also, whenever you cast a spell from exile, he deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. So yes, that is where his ultimate pays off, right? Even if you only get to cast 2 or 3 of those spells, you're gonna deal 6 damage directly to your opponent.
Every card you play, it's a 4 life swing between you gaining 2 and them hitting 2. So play 2 cards, 8 life. Play 3, you got 12. That's pretty powerful. Up next, we have Resplendent Angel. For 1 white, you get a 3/3 angel creature with flying. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 5 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. And the activate ability, 3 white, until end of turn, it gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink. So, base rate, this is a 3/3 flying for 3, already above rate. And when you can gain life, which is probably easiest by activating this ability to make it a 5/5 flyer with lifelink, you'll end up after that getting your 4/4 flying vigilance creature on top of that. So efficient creature when it comes down, and if it survives long enough, you're going to get a great activation to get another creature, a bunch of life, bigger. Yeah, it does a lot of good things with it. So all that combined makes this a really good card. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think it's a really great card as well. I will say, like, the idea of spending 6 to give it +2/+2 in the lifelink, like, you are spending 6 to basically gain 5 life and get a 4/4, so that's not 4/4 flyer. So that's not terrible, but it's going more. Sorry, what?
4/4 flyer with vigilance. It helps.
Yes. Also, yeah, flying and vigilance. Yes. But yes, still though, like, you're basically spending every turn doing that potentially. Now, if you're going to do that, like, you'll very quickly overwhelm your opponent, and we don't really necessarily need to play anything else. But at the same time, your opponent's going to have a lot of chances to potentially kill this, right? If you activate that ability in response, they can abrade it, and then you've just wasted 6 mana. And congratulations, I guess. So there are a lot of ways to potentially deal with this card. So I think for me, that's what holds it back a little, but it's still.
So what grade would you give this not will be in your sheet? I know you already graded it, but like, just again, what would you grade it at right now?
I would probably put it at a B or a B plus. I probably graded it higher on the sheet, but
that's why I asked, because you're right on everything you said. I have a B plus. You had an A minus. I don't think it quite goes to A minus, and your tone indicated that as well. Yeah. As we review the cards,
I looked at it, I think, and I was like, "Wow, this is great." And then I'm thinking about it more, and especially in comparison to some of the other cards in the set. Yeah. I mean, it's good, but not the best, right? Like, I'd still take it if I saw it and I was playing white. For sure, absolutely. Next up, and it's the last of our bomb rares that we are going to highlight today, rares and mythics, is the Skullspore Nexus. So this one costs a whopping 8, 6 colorless, and 2 green. For that, you get a legendary artifact. However, this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And so that can very much bring this down a lot. And whenever one or more non-token creatures you control dies, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness, each equal to the total power of those creatures. And then for 2 colorless, you can tap it to double target creature's power until end of turn. So that's a lot, but the bottom line on it is that this is probably coming in, and with say, if 3 or 4 is your average creature power, right, and it might be your highest. This is going to cost you 4 or 5 as opposed to 8. So it can come out pretty quick on the board. And then anytime you have a creature that dies, or when one or more dies, you create a fungus dinosaur with base power and toughness equal to the total power of those creatures. So let's say, you had a 3/3 and a 4/2. that both sides, because your opponent blocked, you get a 7/7 fungus dinosaur. And you can also use this card to double the power of a creature to potentially like get a bigger dinosaur out of it, or double the power of that 7/7 fungus dinosaur, so it's a 14/7. There are just so many things this card does, and it's absolutely amazing. I mean, you think you played this with the 6/6 dinosaur for 3, right? You put that guy out, and you put this out. This thing costs 2. Turn 4, you can play it and activate it, and then swing with that 6/6 dinosaur as a 12/6. Anyways, there's just so much this card does, and it's basically it's gonna probably more than likely it's gonna win. So
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I am a little bit lower, and I'm on the B plus range on this one, just because that whole thing of it doesn't do a whole lot when it comes into play. Um,
I mean, does it? You've got
you can trigger the doubling the power, but it also like it doesn't have flash, so like
Sure.
So you can't like surprise them.
But I mean, if you have more creatures than your opponent, whichever creature they don't block is the one you punch.
Right. That's what makes it a B plus in my opinion. That combined with it's going to make creatures for you and stuff, but like it's not a creature permanent to interact with.
Sure.
Itself the very first turn. That's my only gripe. And when I say gripe, B pluses are cards I'm picking all the time. So
yes.
So yeah, that's all. I'm at a B plus. Looks like you're at an A. I mean, this could definitely take away the game. It's a good card.
Yeah. I mean, it won't win you the game. Probably the turn it comes into play, unless again you manage to pull this and the 6/6 dinosaur for 3, and then on turn 4 you're hitting your opponent for 12. But I mean, then it is winning the game. But like that's going to be a rare case if that ever comes up. I'm sure someone will do it. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's the thing about it for me is that unless your opponent has artifact removal, like if they have a braid, which they may well, it's going to make it so that you always have creatures, right? You always have something to attack or block with, because this is going to create things. And you got to think, like, if you attack, and let's say they block both of your creatures, the new creature you get is an immediate block, because it's not going to come into play back. So for me, this is just excellent in green red. I mean, that's obviously for me the color that I think goes best in. It's just going to help you beat down your opponent. No matter what you have, you can have like a one. You can have a bunch of 1/1 that even if they kill them all, it becomes some giant fungus dinosaur. So, anyways, yeah, I think it is. I could maybe see it as an A minus. I'm not sure I would go down to B plus, but you're right. Regardless of whether it's A to B plus, it's probably getting first pick in a lot of cases.
All right, moving on to the uncommons that at least one of us thought was B plus or above. So actually, I'll admit all these are mine. We have 4 of them.
Yeah, I didn't think I rated any uncommons B plus. There were some Bs, but I don't think I rated anything a B plus.
But we're B plus is still within. It's not technically a bomb, but it's so much over. Like there are a lot of Bs in most sets. It starts getting much rarer to talk about B pluses and above, and so we're kind of putting this into our bomb discussion.
And there's only 4.
And there's 4.
So it's not like there's a lot, right?
And we differ on some of these, right? So Matt's obviously a bit lower, at least on some of them. And I think the first one you're actually a decent amount different. The first one up is Chupacabra Echo. For 2 black, you get a 3/2 beast horror spirit creature with Fathomless Descent. This might be the first time we talk about Fathomless Descent. There are 3 kinds of descending graveyard mechanics. There's the Descend 4, Descend 8. Those are as far as I have seen, the only 2 numbers. And then Fathomless Descent.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Fathomless Descent is it counts the number of permanents.
It's an X.
Yeah,
it counts number.
So When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So that's the fathomless part of the X. And to me, this reads like a 3/2 that it happens to be tacked on to a removal spell, right? And
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
you probably in black will have a decent amount of descent, like permanents in your graveyard. And this will pretty regularly be -4/-4. I think that's kind of why they put that 4 number in to trigger that often. And then 8 is kind of hard to get, but you don't need to be much more above -4/-4 before this gets out of hand to kill most things. So because of that, it's a 2-for-1, and I have it pretty high at B plus. That often is the distinguisher for me between like the B range to B plus is it a 2-for-1, and this one is. So
Yeah, and I have it a little lower. I have it at a B minus. I mean, to be clear, I think it's still a very good card. It would probably draw me into black in most cases. Not that that takes a lot of effort, but for me, it's still 4 for a 3/2, and yes, it's a 2-for-1. You're probably killing one of their creatures, but I'm still picking it pretty high, but for me, it doesn't quite get there to like a B plus range, just because I think even as a 2-for-1, once you've killed their creature, it's not a particularly strong card on the board. Now, it will help feed your descent when it dies, so you'll probably get to trade with something for it. But still, I'm not. It's still up there for me. It's definitely a high pick, but I don't know that it quite gets all the way up to like B plus.
fair enough.
All right, so next up, we have another big dinosaur. It is Earthshaker Dreadmaw for 4 colorless and 2 green. You get a 6/6 dinosaur with trample. And when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each other dinosaur you control. So, right off the bat, this guy is, at rate 6 for 6/6, has trample, which is fantastic. I think I'd have to go look at this, but I think I graded this synergy right, because I think it is, amazing in a dinosaur deck. It's still good in a non-dinosaur deck, and I would play this in a non-dinosaur deck. And if I'm playing green, I'm probably playing dinosaurs. But it's good. It's an excellent card. So what do you think? I know you rated it a little higher.
Yeah. I have this as actually, so this was synergy A minus. This is, I think, my highest. I had synergy A minus and kind of B minus.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't synergy it. You're correct. But I put it as a B minus. Again, still, I think it's a very good card. It goes higher, obviously, if you have dinosaurs.
Yeah, without dinosaurs, this does not get into anywhere near the A range. I guess if you didn't have this in dinosaurs, or like the card becomes like a C plus C type of thing. Like if it's just a 6 6 trampler, like that's a card I'll play on my top end, but I'm not in love with it by any means. So it really is the synergy that makes me love it. Is you get the 6/6 trampler and you could draw maybe several cards. I really do want to beat dinosaurs to get the upside, I guess is my point, even though it's an okay card in non-dinosaurs.
The way I think the reason I ended up going with B minus and not doing a synergy, now that I'm thinking back to it, was because you're probably going to have some dinosaurs just by virtue of the fact that you're playing green, and this costs 2 green, right? So you're probably not, if you're not just splashing it in something. And so I said, the worst case scenario is you might draw like 1 card, and then for me that's a B minus, like for 6/6 for 6 with trample, draw a card. So that's kind of why I think I left it at a B minus. But obviously, yes, if you're playing like 5, 6 dinosaurs, then this is easily almost, if not a bomb, almost 1.
Up next, we have Geological Appraiser. For 2 red, you get a 3/2 human artificer creature. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, discover 3. I like a 3/2 and probably a 2 to 3 drop on top of that.
Yeah.
For 4. Again, falls within that 2-for-1 kind of a range. Especially if you're getting a 3-mana thing, it's really good. If you're getting 2, it's just good. That's really all I got to say. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I'm looking at my grade for this, and I think I probably rated this a little low. But I think my other note on this as well, is there other better Discover cards that there's the one that the enchantment, right? I think it gives your creature plus 2/0, I want to say, and then it has Discover 3 when it enters the battlefield. It costs 3.
+1/+1 and trample.
Oh, +1/+1 and trample. Yeah, okay, and it costs 3, and for me, that's a better card in a lot of ways.
I disagree, but that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, and that's fair. That's totally fair. But I like that one more because it costs 1 less, and it basically gives you the same Discover value that you pay for it. And it provides trample to one of your creatures, so it lets you get through with more damage. Whereas this is getting you a 3/2 for 4, and you don't know what else. Whereas so that one I like that because I think it gives you more ability to hit your opponent. Whereas this may do that. And it's not bad in my mind. I'm probably low at a C minus. It's probably more like a C, maybe C plus. I don't know that it quite gets me to the B range on its own. But if I'm already going into red and considering some other Discover cards, I'm glad to take this card.
Yeah, and I can see, especially this set has a lot of high-powered creatures, and so trample becomes an important thing. So the other card plays the role of getting to your opponent, and that's a good point.
Yeah.
In general, I'll take more permanence. Yeah. When I say, and yes, an aura is technically a permanent, but I don't mean that. You know what I mean? Like something that impacts the battlefield.
More creatures. More blockers, more attackers. Yeah, I got it. And that's fine. But the thing about it is, right, like this may not get you a fight. It might get you a break, right, or something.
Which I'm fine removing a permanent.
Yeah. I'm fine getting an abrade too. But So that's the kind of thing with Discover, though, is it's like. There are going to be times when it comes up absolutely amazing, and then there are going to be times when it finds you something that's going to be kind of useless for your current situation. So it is in a lot of ways a gamble. But yeah, this is certainly not bad by any means. And I think reasonable minds can kind of determine or differ on how effective we think it'll be. But it's certainly it's not trash. So you're probably going to take this if you're taking red. All right. So last up in our uncommons that we both liked, or that at least Jeremy liked, let's put it that way, is Staunch Crewmate, and I think I rated this one pretty well. 1 colorless, 1 blue, for a 2/1 human pirate. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact or a pirate card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, I take that back. I don't think I rated this fairly highly. But it's probably a synergy on my grade sheet. But I'll let you go. I'll let you talk about it first, and then maybe I'll have some thoughts.
So I did put synergy. I do think you want to have. I mean, there's a lot of artifacts in the set, but you don't want to miss. Right. So you want artifacts and pirates. So you're probably going to be playing this in red-blue. But when you do, a 2-mana 2/1 that draws you another card is effectively Aspiring Overseer, I think that was a 3-mana 2/1 that draw your card, and that was a bomb. It had flying, but still,
and you gain life.
And you gain 1 life. It was a ridiculous card. But this, in a way, is
notably this has none of those things.
But it's 2/3 of the mana. It only costs 2 for your 2/1, and you get to draw a card.
But you may not actually get to draw a card.
Yeah, I mean, that's why.
So you're gambling.
That's why I put it as synergy. I'm putting enough pirates and artifacts in my deck where I'm going to draw it 100% of the time.
No, I had this as a D. I had this as a D plus. It was kind of a mean grade, but so maybe it's a little high. Maybe it's a C minus. But I mean, I don't really love it just because I think it's pretty weak. I mean, a 2/1 for 2 is below rate. Yeah, you may get another card, but even if you got 10 pirates and artifacts in your deck, you've still got a, you've got maybe a 50-50 shot or like a 25, no, probably more like 50-50 shot of drawing it, right, in those 4 cards. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot, but if you do it turn 2 and it pays off, like, you're good. Like, that's a good payoff. So yeah, I mean, it's probably a little higher than B plus, but
In this set, so if I am playing pirates, I am going to have way more than 10 artifacts and pirates in my deck. I'm basically going all out on artifacts and pirates. So I think it'll hit. That's why I put the synergy. I think it'll hit more than a lot of people think. But you are right. If you have a chance of whiffing on this, it is not good. And I do think my grade's a little high. So, I'm going to come down to a synergy B. And again, I do stress you don't want to miss on this. Like, you do want the synergy to hit. So you're going to want something like 14 artifacts and pirates or more.
So as a heads up, there are 15 different pirates in the set. I'm gonna look this up real quickly and see how many of them are common or uncommon.
That's not that much. Artifacts are a big piece.
Sure. Yes, artifacts are also there, so that's true. But I just want to point out, like, it's not necessarily going to be a walk in the park to build an entire deck that's pirates and artifacts, especially if other people around in your draft pod are potentially taking them as well. Not that it's going to be impossible by any means, but I don't know that it's going to be like a slam dunk every time you do it.
Yep.
So anyways, it's not a terrible card. That is the most generous thing to say. But anyways, now we can move on to the ones where we had pretty significant disagreements. In some cases, I think almost 2 grades. So, so do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, up first we have Pearl into History. For 3 blue, you get instant counter target artifact or creature spell. Discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. I just like I don't remember what I put this at. I put it at a B. I like knowing that I can just hold my mana up and pretty much counter on whatever they play on their turn and still get a permanent play. So stop them, play something on my end. That seems to be quite a bit for 5 mana. I don't really care that much what I'm hitting. With my Discover X, that could be 2 is a little low, but still fine. And it's just upside from there. So, it's not like a bomb or anything, but I have this as a B. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think this card is absolute trash. I mean, I have it as a D minus. And the reason for that is, right, I don't care what you're countering with it. Like 5 mana for a counter spell is insane. And the thing about it is, even if you counter a 6 mana spell and you discover 6, if the first card you find costs 1 mana, that's the card you get. And so, like, I just can't see it as being particularly good, because unless you're stacking your entire deck with high cost things, and then you save it to counter their high cost thing, you're not really getting the effect of the payoff as well. And having to keep 5 mana open just means that's just 5 mana you can't use to do any number of other things. So that's my take on it, right?
Yeah.
I do not like the spell.
You're right that Discover X as X increases definitely has diminishing returns, right? Because you're not necessarily going to get the mana value thing. I think you're looking a little bit at this too much of like the 5 mana get something big out on your side. This is really more of the 5 mana counter them. They don't get something
theirs,
and still get something out of it. Like, I'm okay getting like a 2/2 out of this a lot of the time, even. So let's put it this way. The card that's most similar to this is Mystic Sting. That was blue, green 1, 2/2. Play it with flash when it's played counter target spell. That card made constructed decks and was great.
This card will be great in constructed decks. I don't know that I like it in limited And the reason I don't like it in limited is because it's, you know, like, I don't want, like, you're going to have to save your mana consistently in order to have this at the ready for whatever your opponent plays, which means you're not playing spells, right? It's much easier to save a 2 or 3 mana counter because you can still probably, when you've got 5, 6 mana, you can still play something and then hold up the counter. Whereas this is like, from turn 5 on, you're not playing anything until you get to like 7, 8 mana because you're going to be wanting to save this counter. Otherwise, it's just sitting in your hand and it's useless. So that for me is like, I don't see how it's beneficial just because you're going to be sitting on a lot of mana that you're not going to necessarily be able to.
Yeah, I when I'm passing with this up, I'm intending to play it on almost anything that my opponent plays. You are right that there's a couple things. Like, it does hurt when you if your opponent reads that you have this and they're ahead on board, then they decide not to play anything to get around it.
Or they play like a 1/1 or like something cheap and hold up some mana, and then you're like, well, shit, do I use it or do I hold it? Like, do they have something else that they're going to use?
Or if they play an instant sorcery spell, that also gets around this. So those are good points, and that's what keeps me from going any higher on this. But I do have this be. I can see
the other thing that I hate about it. It should, if it's going to cost you 5 mana, it should be counter target spell. Right? Like, there's no reason this should be artifact or creature. You get counter target artifact or creature for 2 mana. So
it feels like I like all the Discover cards more than you do.
No, I like Discover, but like, I don't like it on this, right? Like, again, I really like the one that's, +1/+1 and trample for 3 and Discover 3. Like, that's a really good card, and I will probably play that many times. This one I just don't.
So, in my opinion, this one will be a good blue card in the blue color. I do fear that its win rate will still be low because I'm not so sure about blue in general. So just like, how the color, yeah. So this might go in not so good of decks. I don't know. We have to wait to see. It's going to be hard to judge, but I do fear, like, at the end of the set, we're going to do a review of our grades, and I was like, how was I thinking B? Well, normalize the blues, and it's a B within the blues.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So I think we've said enough about that one. Next up, we have the Myco Tyrant. He costs, or she, or it, costs 1 colorless, 1 black, and 1 green. For that, you get a star Elder Fungus with Trample. It's legendary. The Myco Tyrant's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control that are fungi and/or saplings. At the beginning of your end step, create an X/1/1 black fungus creature tokens with this creature can't block, where X is the number of times you descended this turn. So, like, I gave this an F. And I gave this an F solely based on the fact that there are 0 saplings in this set, and there's very few fungi. Now, it itself is a fungi, so it's going to come in as a 1/1 no matter what. And you obviously, as you descend, you get more. So you're going to be generating more things with this. I think the thing for me that is, like, this is going to be an excellent card in Constructed. I don't like it at all for limited, because I think it's going to come in as a 1/1. If you happen to, there are a couple of fungi in the set, so if you happen to get those, those blue and black, maybe it's going to come in as like a 2/2, but there's not many of them, so the odds are this is not going to do a whole lot for you at the beginning. If you can keep it alive to descend multiple times, then you might get it to like a 4/4, 5/5 trample, but at that point, that takes so much effort that I'm not sure I really like this.
Yeah.
But that's my take on it.
Yeah. So I don't really disagree that much, even though our grades are drastically different, and I think I just got tired of putting effort into grading at some point. So, like, this was among one of the last ones that I looked at, and it was so I have it as a B-. What my comment was, I'm sure this does the thing. but I'm skeptical that the act of descending is easy enough to trigger to really get this rolling quickly. So this one's me giving Wizards the benefit of the doubt. They have it as a rare. It's clearly in the black green descend route, and I do like creating a bunch of 1/1 tokens. I don't like that those tokens can't descend themselves, so it doesn't like fuel itself or
Yeah.
And I do think
my grade would be totally different if that was
yeah. I just I funked this one. That's fine. I'll go down to maybe not F, but I'll come down at it as well. It's
F is probably too low. It's probably for me in the D range. Like if I happen to grab a number of fungi in black, like there's a few I think there's like one at common and one or two at uncommon. If I happen to grab a couple of those and I see this guy, then I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. But I wouldn't go too much higher on it.
Yeah. Up next, we have Unstable Cliff Bridge. For 3 white, you get an artifact. This is your biggest major board wipe of the set. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, for each player, choose a creature with power 2 or less that player controls. Then destroy all creatures except creatures chosen this way. It also has Craft with Artifact for 3 white, and it turns into a 5/3 flyer. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during their turn, they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Each opponent that did attack you can't cast spells this turn. So, basically, what I liked about this was I have it. I was debating around the B to A range, and I just decided to go with A. Solid A is too strong. Honestly, like judging this again, I think B plus is probably better. What I like about this is board wipes that destroy everything and leave you something behind that's powerful tend to do well.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like for back in the day, like a Psychoton, where upheaval everything, get rid of everything, boom, one thing that'll end the game. And that's kind of what this does with the 5/3 flyer at the end of that, of wiping everything. So that's why I like this a lot. Otherwise, I don't like board wipes in general because they kill both your stuff and opponents. But when it leaves you something powerful behind, I do. Anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, I had this as a C minus. That might be a little bit too low, but for me, the thing is, it costs so much. Five mana for a board wipe is already one above rate. Now, granted, you get the options like choosing. You get to choose. What creature they keep and what creature you keep, right? So that's nice. You can choose their crappiest creature and your best, that's less power. But then you have to pay 5 again, crap with it. So that's expensive. You do get the 5/3 flyer, and it really kind of screws your opponent in a lot of ways because they have to either choose between casting spells or attacking you, but they can't have both. But for me, right, I think it's really the cost that holds it back, like 10 mana total to get the creature out. The other thing that's interesting and funny about it is I'm not sure whether this is a typo on Blizzard's part or not, but the last ability, right, says each opponent who attacks you or a planeswalker you control this turn can't cast spells. It doesn't say can't cast spells this turn. It just says can't cast spells. And so I'm assuming that's not intentional, right? That they can just never cast a spell again. But anyways, that I just found kind of funny with it. It's like when I was reading it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's going to get eroded somehow. But anyways, it's an okay card. I would definitely play it if I'm playing with all like white artifacts. Notably, it's really interesting with that 0/6 Tortoise. You can choose and keep the 0/6 Tortoise, and you get to keep it 6/6. Yeah. Anyways, that's what I think of it. All right. So next up we have Lost Scavenger. And this is for 2 colorless and 1 green, you get a 3/2 raccoon, which is probably one of the very few raccoons we've seen in any set, really. It has Descend 4, so when Lost Scavenger enters the battlefield, if there are 4 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So this guy, I didn't have him. I have him as a D. D's probably too low. But it for me, it's one of those things where he's great when he pays off. But he also then works against your descend in some ways because you're going to be returning something from your graveyard. So, like, I don't like, in general, I don't like cards that work against, kind of their own mechanics. And this guy kind of does. So you're obviously going to play him in a descend deck. So maybe you're playing green black. And you're going to need to have more cards in your graveyard to do it. But then he's kind of working against all of your other cards that may require descend or things like that. Now, granted, you're getting another card back. You're going to get to play it again. You can still die again. So yeah, D's probably too low on this. He's probably for me more like in the C minus range. But he's a little bit below rate at a 3-2. Granted, he can get you something. Whatever, you can get something big back that you can play. But anyways, yeah. So what do you think?
I just think it's fine early as a 3-2 for 3. I mean, that's definitely not. So I have it as a B, and that version is not a B. But it's good to know you do want to play things on curve. Good early, good late, so good point of a card. And then the late game where you really want to be playing this, you get a 3-2 for 3, and then you can bring whatever the best thing back to your hand is. So that was enough to pull me up to the B. It does require the descent for it to take effect. It's kind of like a cheaper Gravedigger. Slightly better creatures. So I don't know. I'm somewhere between B and B minus. Let's put it that way. Up next, we have Cosmium Confluence. For 4 and a green, you get a sorcery. With choose 3, you may choose the same mode more than once. Search your library for a cave card, put it onto battlefield tap, then shuffle. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on a cave you control. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. It's still land. And destroy target enchantment. I have this as a B, Matt, or sorry. I have this as a synergy B minus. Matt, you have this as a D minus. So I agree with you. Caves aren't really that great.
Yeah. This is mostly me hate rating this as I think almost every single one of the caves, with like 1 or 2 exceptions, are just absolute trash. And that's where this rating came from. It's just I'm not planning to play caves very often, or if at all. So yeah.
When I say caves aren't good, I mean like I don't really want to do the caves deck. I will still actively try to get some caves in my deck. Those Discover caves are quite good. There's some other ones that are out there that I do want to have a few caves in my deck. And once I have a few caves in my deck, that's what the synergy is. I need at least a couple, 3, something like that maybe, before I want this. But then this becomes a 5 mana, put a 6/6 into play because you can choose it more than once if you want. It's flexible.
Or if you've already got the cave, it's a 9/9.
Yeah, exactly. So with all that is why I got it to the synergy B minus. That's not screaming head over heels about this card. Like in those cases, I like what it can do.
No, and again, I hate rated this, so this is probably a little too low for it. I mean, there are a couple of okay caves. I believe there's one that comes into play. You choose a color, it can add that color, so that's actually in my mind a good cave because it can help you fix your mana a little bit based on what you need at the time. And there's like 1 or 2 other really good ones or decent, or not really good. There's 1 or 2 other decent caves that I'd consider playing. And if I play one of those, I don't even need 2 or 3, I guess. If I was playing one of those, I'd take this card because whether I already have it out on the board or it's still in my deck, it's still either 6/6 for 5 or 9/9 for 5. And in that case, I think it's absolutely fine. The only time I wouldn't like that is obviously if I milled it or something and it's in my graveyard, and then I'm like, well, shit. But yeah, I mean, D minus is certainly too low. I'm not impressed with Fates overall, and so I can't imagine, finding too many situations where I end up having a cave in my deck where I would actually want to take this card.
Makes sense.
So next up, we have Deep Root Pilgrimage. And for that, you get for one colorless and one blue, you get an enchantment. Whenever one or more non-token merfolk you control become tapped, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token with expert. I rated this as a synergy B. This is one where I actually rated it higher than you. I rated it as a synergy B, and you rated it as a synergy D. So I like this because it can play off of itself, right? So as long as you have another merfolk out, this is going to get you more. There are a number of opportunities that you might have to tap them other than attacking. I like that they have expert.
You saw that it has to be a non-token merfolk that becomes tapped.
Oh yeah, yes, correct, yes, non-token merfolk. Okay, well then I probably rated this too high.
Yeah.
So it's probably more like a synergy C for me. But there are not a lot of merfolk, so the other thing about it is like, okay, you're gonna have to really go with that strategy to make it useful. So anyways, yeah.
This kind of reads like a constructed card to me. Like if someone wants to build a merfolk deck, and this will give you a lot of merfolk, but hey, I don't really care
There
about it.
are 11 merfolk in the set.
Yeah.
And most of them I think are either common or uncommon, but still, yes, that's not a lot. If you want to build a green blue merfolk deck, then yeah, this is maybe not a terrible card.
Up next, we have Dire Flail. For 1 red, you get an artifact equipment with equipped creature gets +2/+0. It has equip 1. It also has crafted artifact for 3 red. When you craft it, equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact other than it. When you do, this creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. I have this as a B. Matt, you have this as a D. I don't mind. So part of this is how much you like Short Sword, which is a one mana artifact equipment, equip 1 +1/+1. This is obviously a little different. It's the mana costs are right, but it's +2/+0, which I mean, I don't know. I see it fairly similar. That in itself is just like a C- or so, but when you're able to flip this over and anytime you attack, just blow something out. That's it.
You have to, the thing that for me is you have to have another artifact to sacrifice.
In red,
And in red you're probably gonna have treasure tokens. Like it's not impossible, but you got to pump like you have to pump like a lot of mana into this, right? And so like right, so it's 1 to cast, 1 to equip, that's 2, 5 to transform it. So that's 7, and then another 1 because when it transforms, it doesn't stay equipped. I'm pretty sure. So you have to equip it again. So that's total 8 mana to get its effect, and then you got to sacrifice something every time you use it. And that for me, that's a really high price to get to where you're at to blow up a creature, basically.
But when you grade these, I think you start the base case. It's like forget the craft. The fact that you can just get the +2/+0 at Short Sword effectively for the 1/1, and also note equipped equipment are artifact that you could tap for synergies. Like they could be on a creature and still tap. So like you're getting a permanent pretty cheaply to use for all your tap synergies. So because that in itself is like a C-, I can't see going lower. And then the craft thing, when you can do that, happens to be really good. I admit I might be kind of high on the B. I'll come down to a B- personally, but that's how I saw this card. You might value Short Sword lower. And
I'm in general not a fan of most equipment. Now there are some. Short Sword's probably one of the better ones, but for me, equipment is always just kind of like it's good if you have mana sitting around, but if you have mana sitting around, that's bad. Like you should never have mana sitting around. And so I always look at it as like there are things I'd probably rather be spending my mana on than using it to equip something to a creature. But that's a personal preference, right? Like I understand there's certain equipment that's excellent, right? But anyways, it I'm probably too low on it at a D, but I don't know that I would come up much. Maybe a C minus, like D plus, C minus, somewhere in that range. Um, if I'm playing red, it's probably better than filler, but I mean, I don't know. It's tough, right? It's tough for me because it costs so much to get
Yep.
to the point where you're really getting the payoff.
Yep, that's fair. I also am with you that I don't really like equipment. I will say the equipment in this set, they're I think they're learning that like they need to pump it up. They need to make equipment better in order to make it playable. Because the same reason I don't like when something comes in the battlefield without being a creature. Equipment itself is not a creature. You need to still have something to attach it to make it powerful. And so I'm with you on that aspect of it, and I can see this being lower than I give it, but I will start it with a B minus, just for that upside of I love attacking and blowing things out.
Yeah. So next up, we have Malicious Eclipse. It is one colorless and two black. For that, you get a sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. If a creature an opponent controls would die this turn, exile it instead. So I rated this, I believe, a synergy B, and you rated it a D. So my argument for synergy B on this is, and I'm not even sure it's a synergy because black has so much descend that to me this is a board wipe, but you do get something out of it because you will get creatures in your graveyard that will power your descent. And so to me that makes this pretty good. It also hits about half the creatures in the set. So it can, more or less take out, a lot of stuff that your opponent might be playing. Certainly, if your opponent starts getting like one of those, the I forget what his name is off the top of my head. The Anin Pakal, right, where you're getting all those 1/1 gnomes, or if your opponent's going wide, doing a go wide strategy. This is excellent because it will just exile everything that they have. And so for me, like it's synergy B, but like I think it's honestly you're gonna find a lot of uses for this. Like so if you've got like if you're blue if you're blue black, this is an excellent card because blue black is all about descend, and this feeds your descend. It feeds the whole idea of blue black, which is generally control, and it lets you kind of set the pace of the game. So that's my case for it as a B.
Yeah, I think that's a good case. It doesn't quite pull me up to B, but you are making the points of how this is better than it normally is. Right? We've seen cards like this in the past, and
Yeah. If Descend was not in this set, then I would say that this is not as good, anywhere near as good, because you're probably it's just a board wipe for 3, and unless you're playing like a deck that has big beefy creatures in that case, then I would say it's less useful. But
yeah,
anyway,
I started this at a D. I will come up now to C minus, and I want to like hold judgment on this. I can see myself coming up more. I want to see it play out. So yeah, this will be an interesting one to test or see him play.
Yeah, and I may be totally off on it, but I do think just the almost every card in black either feeds Descend or feeds off of Descend. And so that's why I think that this is going to be one of those things where you may want to have this. You'll certainly want this in best of 3, but even if you're playing best of 1, like this is not necessarily bad because even if you blow up your own board and kill 2 or 3 creatures, that's 2 or 3 things in your graveyard to Descend. And there's plenty of recursion in black, so you have ways to bring them back. The raccoon that we just talked about, if you're black green, can bring things back. So yeah, I think there's ways to use it. But yeah, you're right. It's going to ultimately come down to it, and it may not fit in the meta, but it may well.
Up next, we have Threefold Thunderhulk. For 7 mana, you get a 0/0 gnome. But it has some abilities on it. It enters with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. And then you can pay 2 and sacrifice another artifact. Put a +1/+1 counter on 3-fold Thunderhawk. I have this as a B plus. Matt has this as a D plus. And I admit this one was weird. Like I went kind of all over the place. And what I thought about is, okay, what is this doing when I play it? So I play for 7 mana. I get 6 power and toughness out of it. I get a 3/3, and then I get 3 1/1s. That's not that. I mean, it's interesting that I have now 4 permanents on the battlefield. Like that adds to all my tapping things as well. But you're not quite getting your power and toughness that you want out of it. No. But the next turn, I can, let's say, sack. All my 3 artifacts are already out there. And now I have a 6/6 that I attack, and I get 6 1/1 tokens on that. All that sort of added up to, like, the next turn, I could just do even more, and I run away with the game. And this kind of reminds me a little bit of, I think, the Lord of the Rings, like, humans thing. There's a bomb. I forget what it, like, you tapped it, and it doubled your, yeah. It has a little bit of that feel to it. I don't think it's that card. Don't get me wrong.
No, it's not. You didn't have to really. You only had to pay for that, and it immediately doubled the number of humans, right? So,
but I think this could run away with the game, and it does do enough to be a good card in my mind. But this is also one where, as I play it, I could maybe come down on. But what do you think?
Yeah. So I had this at a D plus, and my note on it is that it's good, but it's too expensive. And that remains, I think, my opinion on it. Like 7 mana, like that late in the game, I want something better than a 3/3 when it hits the board. And my sole reason for that is like it dies to a Braid. Like, you know, if somebody has a Braid in hand, they play it. You know, you still get the 3/1/1, sure, but you lose that ability. And the odds are you're not going to be able to, like, you know, sack something in response to save it. You just paid 7 mana, so you're probably not going to be able to immediately sack one of your other artifacts.
You could get a Braid and still can, like, destroy artifacts, but yeah.
Yes, destroy target artifact. Yes, right. So it doesn't matter how big you make it, a Braid still hits.
This just makes a Braid's like a bomb in the sack. That's all.
Yeah. But, and that's part of it for me. Is like, you know, there's so much at common that can deal with this that I look at it and I'm like, I can't justify like using 7 mana on that. I'd much rather spend 7 mana on any number of other things. But again, it's still good, right? D plus might be a little bit low. Maybe it's a C minus. But I find a hard time putting it higher than that because I just feel like there's going to be a lot of other cards I'd rather take than this. Just thinking like there's going to be a lot of games where I don't even get 7 mana out on the board. That's 40% of your land. So anyways, it's not bad by any means, but I do think that it's one of those things where the cases where it's going to be useful are somewhat limited.
Yeah. You've definitely talked me down. I'm not sure how far. I'm somewhere between like a B minus to B right now still. But I want to see how it plays out. Yeah. A lot of times the interesting part about late game is that your opponent's already used all their removal and everything. So by the time you get to turn 7, this one will still take away the game because they can't answer it. So I think this might play out a little bit better than you're saying, but you are right. 7 mana is a lot, and you're not getting a lot up front.
And then you have to pay 2 to make it bigger and stuff. And for me, that's just like, sure, you know, I think it could definitely run away with the game. But it's one of those things where, I mean, if your opponent has any big creatures out, they can just block it and kill it. You know, there's a lot of things that can happen. So, anyways, it's not terrible by any means. But all right, so next up we have Treasure Map, which is an artifact for 2 colorless. You pay 1 colorless and tap it to scry 1. You put a landmark counter on it. Then, if there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, remove those counters and transform treasure map and create 3 treasure tokens. And the transformed version is Treasure Cove, which is a land that can tap for colorless or tap and sacrifice a treasure to draw a card. So I graded this as a B, and you graded this as a D. I will make the case for it and why I think it's a B. It's for me, it fits into that two slot where it's great to have out because then you're going to be able to, when you have like one spare mana, use it to scry and see what your next card is, and you're going to get to do that 3 times. So it really helps smooth out your turn 3 plus plays, turn 4 plus plays, probably, so that you can kind of do that. And then once you get to 3, you get all that mana back as 3 treasure tokens. So you haven't really spent anything to do it at that point. And then you can then it transforms, and then you can either choose to use those treasures to make more mana or draw more cards right around the time where your hand is probably getting pretty empty. So I like this because it gives you a lot of options, and because it gives you the ability to kind of see what's coming and decide whether you want that or not. For a fairly cheap price, right? 1 is nothing, but it's it gives you that ability to, if you really need a land, you pay the 1, and you're like, okay, yes, I want that land. If you don't want a land, same thing. So that's why I think B might be a little high on it. It might be more like a B minus, maybe C plus. But I think for me, it's the utility of it, and it gives you options on the board depending on what you.
Yeah, I'd like to use your argument you made previously of not liking to hold up mana around in order to do things like this, like just other random abilities. Like pay 1, tap to scry 1. You need to do that 3 times before you get to the other side, and um, that's a lot of mana that you're using just to do this scry 1 ability, and I don't. And then later,
let me put it this way though. So it is effectively pay 5 mana to look at 3 cards and draw 3 cards potentially if you use the treasures to draw cards. Now you have to do that over multiple turns.
yes.
But for me, I'm paying 5 to draw 3 is a pretty common thing, and that's generally a C-ish card.
It was even better. Like so, into the Fey Court was pretty good last set. Like it was like a C plus or so. But there's a difference between what makes that good is that you can then see, you get your selection of what you want to play immediately the next turn, right? Like you play that, you draw a bunch of cards, and now you can choose to play the 3rd card you drew rather than the first one you drew, right? Like you have all the options on the table. This one, you have to like do a bunch of scrying over 3 turns and want to do that. Like there are times where you want to spend all your mana just get play things,
Sure, absolutely.
So like
absolutely.
it's going to take more than 3 turns to do it. This is probably going to take like 5-6 turns to even get to the one side where you begin drawing cards, and then to get your 3 cards, you need 3 more turns. It's just too many turns for me. That's what I see. I see you're coming with the mana approach, but when it's limited to be over so many turns, I don't get it.
You don't get it all at once. You don't get the payoff all at once. The B might be too high for it, but I do think it's one of those things where if you're going in a longer game, this card will really benefit you because you will have that ability. The other thing about it is if you play this with other treasures, you may draw more than 3, right? So like it could effectively draw you a second card every turn for a number of turns. But yes, you're right. It takes time to get there because you can only use it once unless you have some way to untap it. So I do like though that it opens up options, and it's okay when you're behind as long as you've already transformed it, because then you're just getting to draw cards, which will help you catch up. It's obviously fine when you're ahead. I don't think the 1 mana is going to be as big of an issue. You're right that there are definitely going to be times where you want to spend everything that you have. I probably would only put this in a deck though with some form of ramp, whether it is something where you have treasures from other sources or you have some mana dorks in green. Because you're right, it may get to the point where you don't want to use the mana for that. But I do think that it's one of those things where it also can help you get more mana because if you scry and you see the land, you're like, okay, then I want that land. I like scry as a mechanic. I tried to make green blue scry work really hard in Lord of the Rings because I like scry as a mechanic in general. I like to know what I'm drawing and have the option to decide whether I want to draw it. And so maybe I'm rating this one a little bit high.
I think you are, but who knows? Play with it or see the stats on 17 lands, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. That concludes our grading and discussion of the bombs at rare and mythic and uncommon, as well as some of our biggest differences among the uncommons in the set. As you can tell, this is one where we have a little bit of differences on some of these cards.
It's a very intricate set. This one, there's a lot going on. I'd say, whereas some people trashed the Lord of the Rings set as being a core set basic. I thought it was fun and had its intricacies, but it was simpler than this set. I will say that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This. Well, I mean, the ring bearer was a pretty complex mechanic, but anyways, it's this yes, this has a lot of complex mechanics, and I think this is one where we're going to see the meta evolve pretty significantly throughout the life of the set in limited, because people are going to figure out things that work that aren't obvious from a first glance until you really start sitting down and playing with the cards over multiple iterations. And so I think this one's going to be really interesting to play as, and I'm really looking forward to diving in. We're shooting this the Friday before the set comes out, so it's going to be coming out, mid next week. And I'm really looking forward to diving in and finally getting a chance to dig around in it, dig up some treasure, so to speak. But yeah, if you like this, let us know down in the comments. If disagree with any of our ratings, which you may well, certainly you should agree with me. I'll say always agree with me. Anyways, so
put down in the comments below whether you're Team Matt or Team Jeremy.
But anyways, next time we'll be back with some of our first impressions. After we've gotten around to playing with these, that'll probably be a few days after this hits. So if you like this, like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. And see you in the next one.
See you in the next one. So I am about to bid on an alpha starter deck seal.
Okay. I want to know how much that's going to cost you. That's going to be stupid expensive.
Yeah, I've seen them sell for $100,000.
yeah, that's going to be stupid expensive.
I'm not going to win it. My price I'm going to bid is not. I'll bid a bit above 50,000. I have to figure out exactly how much, but it's under that right now, and it ends in like 30 minutes. So
wow.
The bids are going to jump up all in the last minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people have probably put in like max 100,000 already, and they'll just like auto bid up. But yeah, I mean that'll be insane if you get it. Like, here's the question: I'm assuming you're just going to turn around and resell it. You're not going to open it.
No, I'm not going to open it, but I will maybe sit on it for a little while in my collection. And for those that don't know, my other channel, ManaTutor MTG, no draft at the end. That one I collect sealed product, and I do list everything I collect up for. I'm both a collector and investor. I do appreciate my collection. Like, I just like having that. For those that also don't know, I am looking into doing early retirement down the line, and when I do pass that and don't need the money as much, whatever boxes are left over, I do want to draft my friends and stuff like that. So that's kind of the ManaTutor MTG draft piece of it, is drafting the vintage boxes down the line. But until then, it is a collection in one side and an investment in another. So yes, I'm not going to open that, even when I enter early retirement down the line. And I definitely will sell.
I mean, if you pull the Lotus, though, it's all worth it, right? Like then it's a 500,000.
Yeah, while I used to play poker for my money, I'm not that much of a gambler.
How many rares does an alpha? Or Lotus is a rare, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Lotus.
it is.
Yeah. So, like, how many rares does an alpha starter have?
Oh, so two. All of them had two up until Revise, and Revise was split. Some Revise decks have two rares. Some have three rares. So it depends there.
Yeah, two is not enough. Yeah, the odds on that are pretty low. It's worth more without. It's worth more as Schrodinger's cat, right? Not knowing what's in. Somebody will open it down the line, and if they get the Lotus, then you can just be like, well, shit. But odds are they're going to pull like a Mox, which is worth considerably less, or something like that, versus the Lotus. So how many rares are in Alpha? What are your odds? Two rares out of
I don't know.
I'm actually curious. Because you're the poker player, right? So I'd expect you to know the odds. Like, what are your odds of opening a Lotus in an Alpha Star?
I would know it if I ever wanted to do that. I'm never going to open it. The rarest I've ever owned. I've owned two unlimited starter decks. Each I sold one for $16,000, and I sold the other one for $14,000. I'm not gambling on opening anything over 10 grand.
All right. There are 115 cards in Alpha that are rare. So your odds effectively of opening a Black Lotus in an Alpha starter are about 1 in 57. So like 1.88%, somewhere in there.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Pretty low. So I'm surprised it's that high. That is a lot. That's a lot of rares. But I guess it was Alpha. So I mean, you have like. Then again, there were the rares back then were not like particularly good, except for Black Lotus. So like I'm looking at some Bad Moon. One colorless, one black, all black creatures gain +1/+1. Yeah, that was a rare back then.
Yeah. You basically got your Power 9. Those are your cards that are
that's effectively what you wanted, right? Yeah. I mean, ancestral recall, right? Like anyways. So anyways, but yeah, no, that'll be interesting. I hope you get it.
Yep. We'll see.
Find out. Well, we'll find out you'll find out in like a half hour.
Yep. Yeah, it's I've never bought anything that expensive online, right? And so even if I do win it, like now that I have to figure out how I'm going to pay for it and make sure how are we going to ship and insure it and all.
Insure it, yes. like that's going to be a hell of an insurance cost to go with it, I'm sure.
Yep. Furthermore, they're not based in the U.S., so it becomes even more complicated. They're in Europe.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's going to be a hell of a shipping cost with the insurance. But it probably hell of a shipping cost, but in like comparison as a percentage of the cost you pay for the thing, probably fairly.
Yeah. It's right now. For those that don't know the vintage market, it's crashed pretty hard. All the prices are very low right now, so it's a good time to be buying. So that's why I'm considering it. But we'll see. I don't think I'm going to win it. There are people with bigger pockets that want it more than what I can do. But if I do, great.
Yeah. You're sitting there wanting to Post Malone's at home right now, just like $500,000 match. Right. So anyway.
Anyways, hope you enjoyed that extra errata at the end, and we will really now see you next time.